Hello everyone, AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink. Finally back with a card video. Almost back to normal with my voice after having a horrible rotten cold. Anywho, this video I actually started over a month ago, or like this card I started over a month ago, and then just life kept interrupting. But I saved my SD card with the footage, everything, and then finally got to finishing the entire card, put together all the pieces, the footage, everything, so I can share this with you guys. So I started with my favorite things, Hydrangeas in Bloom stamp, or stamp set. It's just this one great big stamp. And I'm stamping it onto the smooth side of distress watercolor paper. I was just using my mini MISTI, and I'd use my anti-static powder tool, inked up the stamp with Ink on 3's juicy clear embossing ink. And this time I'm using Ranger's super fine detail white embossing powder because this stamp has a ton of, little fine detail. So I don't pull out this emboss powder very often because it really is really detailed. And I find that if an image is just slightly too thick or chunky, if that makes sense, you kind of actually don't get the coverage you need. But for anything with really fine detail, this embossing powder is great. So I save it for things like this. So after I embossed, I have it on my Waffle Flower water media mat here. And I'm very carefully tapping in just a little bit of Nuvo's Shimmer powders. I will always try and remember to say this, do not squeeze the bottles. You will end up with a ton. I'm like a ton, more than you need. Like even what I put here is more than I actually need for this project. It doesn't take much. I've done a bunch of videos. I'll have a playlist at the end using these shimmer powders because I've used them in a bunch of different ways over the last year or two, however long they've been available. And I've done other videos like painting with them too. I love them. They're so pretty. So with these, I had tapped the little bit of powder into the wells of my water media mat. I was getting the area wet first on the paper with just clean water. And then I was going in and picking up the shimmer powder with a wet paintbrush. And I'm starting with purple, which is the violet brocade color. And then I go in and add green. Now, when you're mixing colors, you need to be careful with purple and green. They're kind of opposites. They will turn into mud if you mix them too much. But the thing is with hydrangeas, those ones that have that green on them, like I love hydrangeas. Anyway, you want to be careful. So what I was doing was I was picking up the color with purple with one brush. I was using a completely different brush for the green. And then to slightly blend those colors together, I was using a third just random brush. That doesn't really matter what brush you use as long as they work, really. But the brush I was using for blending had just clean water on it. So I'd very lightly kind of, just so the colors would kind of blend into each other so there wasn't, really harsh lines. And then I would leave it. And that's it, because you don't want to go back and forth, because if you keep moving that green and that purple into each other, they will just end up turning into like kind of a grayish, brownish, muddy, not pretty color. So that's literally all I did. So it took a while for this because it's a large image with obviously a ton of little flowers and petals. But once I kind of got in my groove, it went a lot quicker because I would just get basically the entire blossom, like the entire flower, wet with clean water, pick up the purple shimmer powder, and then just apply it kind of mostly concentrated to the centers of each of the individual little flowers. And then I would take the green, add that to the outer portion. If the area was still wet, they would just kind of naturally blend a bit, and that was great. And if not, I would just go in with a clean brush that had just water on it and just kind of blend those colors together a bit, and it was good. So the beautiful thing with the shimmer powders, of course, is they do have a glitter. Always difficult to show. I will show once everything's dry using the flashlight on my phone. And I'll show it at the end again too, but it's definitely one of those things too where pictures and video don't do it justice. They're just pretty. So I painted everything, let it completely dry, and then turned on the flashlight on my phone so you guys can kind of get an idea of this like shimmer sparkly fabulousness. So tilted it back and forth. I can just sit here and play with this all day. That's probably another reason why this video took so long, because I would just sit and stare at this because I've had it literally sitting on my desk for a month. Anywho, it's completely dry. So then I used the coordinating Die-Namics wafer die to line up on this image, taped it into place with some washi tape, and then I'm going to run that through my die cut machine. I'm going to set that aside. I'm going to work on the background for my card base. And this is some smoke gray cardstock and MFT's Candy Stripes stencil. So I'm just working still on the media mat, and I just taped the stencil down with some washi tape, just hold it in place. I'm using some of Simon's Slate ink, which is a darker shade of gray than the cardstock, and just a big blending brush. And with the blending brush, I'm kind of working in the direction this stencil goes because I didn't use pixie spray or any adhesive to hold it down. And there's these long strips of the stencil. And if you're going opposite the direction they're going in, or like say a real circular motion, it's just going to make those straight, like the stencil itself, move. So then you're not going to get crisper stripes, if that makes sense. So I'm just kind of working in the direction they go. If that, with certain stencils, if that becomes an issue, that's where the pixie spray or a repositionable adhesive can really come in handy. But I find more often than not, I can avoid using that with some stencils anyway, by just using my brush or whatever blending tool I'm using in the direction of the stencil. So finish the background, set that aside. This is definitely one of those cards too, and this is probably why it took so long, is I used like a million different products, all the different tools. It was like, let's use everything I own. I'm totally under, you know, just over exaggerating everything, because if I used everything I own, this video would be like 100 hours long. Anyway, I pulled out my Spellbinders Glimmer hot foil machine. I turned it on and plugged it in. When you turn it on and plug it in, the red light goes on, and then you have to wait till the first green light goes. Once that's on, it's ready, it's heated up. You set your hot foil wafer die or whatever you're using. With this, I'm using my favorite things, Impressive Die-Namics. So these do not cut, they impress. They're meant to use with hot foil machines like this. So I had that on there, pressed the timer button. When the timer button went off, I put some foil, some glimmer hot foil on it. This is Prism Glimmer Hot Foil from Spellbinders. And then some purple cardstock. And then I ran this through, took the whole hot plate out, ran it through my Platinum 6 die cut machine with the shim and the mat that come with the hot foil system. And I have a little cardstock shim in there as well. So I peeled off the hot foil, and I have this perfectly foiled sentiment. This is the first time I've used any of the My Favorite Things brand of their Impressive Die-Namics. I am pleased with the results, very pleased. And I'm going to have to play. I've got a couple other sentiments by them that I'm going to have to play with as well. So there is a wafer die that kind of coordinates with this Impressive Die-Namics. It's actually meant to go with the stamp set, but because it's similar size and shape, I was able to die cut the sentiment as well. So it took a little bit of fiddling just to get it lined up, because you can't really see through that wafer die. But I die cut that sentiment. And then off camera, I took some green cardstock and I stamped and white heat embossed a sentiment from the All About You stamp set and trimmed that down with my paper trimmer. So now I've kind of got everything ready to go. So I'm going to adhere my flowers to that stenciled background just using some craft tacky glue. So I put that on to the florals, press that down, and then for the little green sentiment strip, I'm going to adhere that with some of Simon's Big Mama foam tape. So I just cut a little piece of that, and then I had to cut it in half because the sentiment strip is narrower than the foam tape. So got that adhered to the back of the sentiment strip, press that down really well, and then I'm going to peel off the backing and adhere this to my card front. And off camera, I had backed the foiled sentiment with my little Derice foam strips because I just peeled off the backing, was able to pop that into place. So got that all backed with the adhesive, so then I can just quickly flip it over and adhere it right below the heat emboss sentiment. So got that adhered into place, and then I want to finish the inside of my card. So I have my white card base here that is going to be a top folding A2 size card, so 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. So I've got the inside of my card here inside my MISTI. I'm going to line up this Hydrangeas in Bloom stamp again. And this time I'm going to ink up the stamp with, I'm just using my tombow markers. Any water-soluble markers will work, or like little distress inks, anything like that. Like I've shown a ton of different ways of, you know, adding color to your stamps in videos. So I just grabbed a couple shades of purple, like a light purple, a darker purple, and a green with my tombow markers. And I'm just holding the marker almost completely sideways. So I'm using more of the side of the bristle or like the felt, because it's a felt tip. It doesn't have bristles. So just using the side of the felt tip brush to apply the color. I started with the lighter purple, added some of the darker purple, And then I'm going to go back with a lighter, just kind of blend them together a bit right on the stamp. And I'm going to take the green, add that to the leaves and the stems, and I'm also going to add a little bit of green here and there on the blooms just to kind of mimic what I did on the outside of the card. So once I've got that added, I'm going to very lightly spray this with my little Nuvo spray bottle just a couple times just to moisten everything to make sure, you know, it stamps properly. And then I'll stamp that on the inside of my card. I missed a couple spots, so I'm just going to quickly add a little bit of marker to the spots I missed and then re-stamped it. And then I pulled out a couple more sentiments from the All About You stamp set. The big U word, and then another one of the sentiments. So got that kind of lined up on the inside of my card, and I'm going to ink that up with that same slate gray ink that I used with the stencil. So I'm going to stamp this a couple times to get a good crisp image with these sentiments. And then that's going to finish the inside of the card. So now that the inside's done, I can adhere the card front to the card base. I'm just using some craft tacky glue for this. And I'd cut down the gray cardstock to be slightly smaller than the card front, so it's framed by the card base. So got that adhered, and then I can flip this over and just cut off that little bit of the floral image that's hanging off the card base so that this will fit in an A2 envelope. And then, of course, gotta add a bit of bling. I went through my stash and I found these Studio Caudia crystal clear confetti. They're perfect because they really mimic the prism glimmer foil I used for the big U sentiment. So they just go together perfectly, and that just makes me happy. So I sprinkled those throughout the card front, and then I'm going to adhere these into place with my Studio Caudia embellishment wand and just some craft tacky glue. And then once that's adhered into place, this card is finished. So as always, I will have a link below the video to my blog post. I will have a supply list. I'll link to everything I used if you want to check that out. It'll be in the description box below as well as on my blog. My blog will also be linked directly below the video, so you can check it out if you're interested. Thank you all so much for watching and subscribing and thumbs upping and commenting. I really appreciate it. And hopefully I'll be back very soon with a whole bunch of videos. Whole bunch of stuff planned, all that fun stuff. And now that I've actually got a voice again, I can get some voiceovers done. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all very soon in the next video. Bye!